Right, so greetings, hello, welcome back to the Philosophy Club here in Little Patet, centre of Gaul, ancient Celtic centre of the universe, just near Auvergne. We're at the mix of several departments here in the north east of La Creuse. And yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world. It's Christmas, got the lights on. It's actually the Winter Solstice today. So happy Winter Solstice to everyone. You know, in the Druid community it's quite important. My friends have been at Stonehenge and Avebury celebrating it. And also all over the other stone circles in Britain and Gaul and throughout Europe really. And I'll talk a bit more about what that means, why we do that, what is the solstice, why it's important in a minute. Let's do a little roundup of the news of the week. So on my personal front here in the Musée des Muses, I have very tragic news to report. In that my cat, Bishy, who has often taken part in the philosophy clubs and comes and sits on labs, is not very well. She's got a sort of something growing in her eye, a cyst I think it's called, which I took it to the vet twice in the local town and he doesn't know what it is. He said it's got to be operated on and only then will they know what it was when they've taken it out. Now that's a big if. It looks like, I said, is it a benign tumour? Giving him a few hints. I'd done some AI on what it could be and one of them was a benign tumour. Well, that's got to come out. Could it be a cancerous tumour? It's, you know, again, don't know, can't say until it's taken out. Could it be a blocked gland in her bottom eyelid? Well, it's a bit big because it's the size of like a sort of golf ball sweep that you used to get when you were kids. You know, it's quite big and it's pushing against her eyeball. So that's sad. But having said all that, she doesn't seem to be in pain. It doesn't seem to bother her. So one school of thought is saying just let it fall out, whatever it is, let it come out naturally. Because the thought of putting on a general anaesthetic and extracting it with knives is, she might not survive, you know. So at the moment we're just letting it run its course and I'm watching it carefully, but she's not. And she's trotting around and doing her thing. And she is 15 or 16, so she's had a good innings. But anyway, so that's my first bit of sad news. And so she probably won't be participating tonight. The other bit of news is to say, and this is kind of important, I was at a conference online last, the 14th, it was exactly a week ago, Sunday the 14th of December. We didn't have a philosophy club that week because of that. And it was a long conference run from Turkey, a friend of mine in Istanbul, about 20 or 30 people from all over the world, people particularly from the Middle East. What was interesting is it's run by a Muslim friend of mine, Moeen Yassin, who's Scottish, now living in Istanbul, and we were discussing Interfaith Eschatology, so that's a branch of philosophy, eschatology, to do with the future, where we're going as a planet and as a culture and a civilization. And each of the religious traditions of the Middle East has a sort of eschatological framework, what's going to happen in the future, tied in with their prophetic lineages. So Islam has a particular angle on this. What's going to happen is things are going to get worse and worse, knowledge will plummet, everyone's running around being sinful, and then God is going to send Christ back, and Muhammad, who's his backup. Muhammad's the heavy brigade. They're going to come back and sort everyone out. Before that, the Antichrist will appear, and there'll be a battle between, and Jesus is going to kill the Antichrist. This is what Muslims believe. And then Muhammad and Jesus will usher in a golden age. Now that is the sort of prophetic eschatology that most Muslims believe. There are variants in all the different branches of Islam. In Judaism it's different because they don't accept Christ as a Messiah, they don't accept Muhammad as a prophet even. So for them, their Messiah is going to come, and he is going to sort everything out and make Israel happy forever. there are variants of this story. Sometimes he's going to destroy every other nation on earth. That's the extreme, let's call it the Likud version of Jewish eschatology. So every other nation gets bombed to smithereens, but the Jews live on happily ever after with their Messiah. There are variants of this because liberal Jews say that their Messiah is not just coming for them, but for everyone. So he will usher in a golden age for all humanity. And there's big fights going on within Judaism for the last 2,000 years over that.
All the Likuds have started very well now. They started on the...
They're following their Messiah script, which is the Netanyahuist, let's kill everyone that isn't of our club.
Yeah.
The Christian one is slightly different. It's that, yes, things are bad, things are going to get worse. It's based on the book of Revelations, the Apocalypse. Jesus is going to come back, and there will be trouble and trials and tribulations. But eventually we will get to a place of peace, and we will sort out the good souls on this planet. They will get spiritual guidance, succor, etc. Now, I've had long discussions with my Jehovah's Witness friend who comes to visit here, who's a descendant of Voltaire, and she has a Jehovah's Witness take on this Christian thing, which is that all the bad people are going to be zapped and destroyed by a very angry, revengeful Yahweh. Jesus is just his front man, but Yahweh's going to come down from the clouds and zap everyone else. And apparently only 144,000 people are going to be saved and go up into, and then the earth will be totally cleansed of all the bad people. And the 144,000 who've been parked somewhere in the heaven worlds will come down and live here happily ever after. That's not an Orthodox or Catholic or Anglican eschatology. It's a Jehovah's Witness angle. So it's very complicated, this. And then there's the Baha'is have got their own one. The Zoroastrians have got theirs, and they invented the whole idea of a Messiah with the Seishant concept, who's coming back for them to save them. So we discussed all this, and it was fascinating. We had speakers from different philosophical traditions, Muslims. We had a rabbi come on in his full rabbi gear who was joining us from New York. And he was very good. He was saying, look, I'm speaking on behalf of actual Judaism. And what Netanyahu and the Likud are doing in Gaza is not Judaism. Zionism is not Judaism. It's a heresy. We've been saying this for 100 years, he said. And it's completely against Jewish ethics to mass slaughter civilian population. It's nothing, it has no sanctions from Judaism. So what they've done, he said, is cleverly conflated this idea that Israel is a Jewish state, i.e. follows Judaism, and therefore on the good side of history. He said, no, that's not true. They are political activists who've stolen Jewish identity, hijacked it, and turned into a military nationalist, thuggish regime, which we oppose utterly, he said.
Political games.
They're playing political games. And anyway, he was a very, very intelligent rabbi who had worked it all out and was speaking on behalf of probably millions, actually, of genuine followers of Judaism. And it was refreshing to meet a great rabbi like that. And we heard from, there was, of course, there were other people. I won't go into the whole thing. It was recorded. I'll put it on my YouTube channel when I get it together, technically. Because there's a bit of a logjam. One of my computers is broken. But I gave a talk, obviously. And I just said, let's study this. And I talked about the periodic table. I said, look, every one of the boxes has an eschatology, has a sort of theory. Let's look at it scientifically. I said, look, I'm a philosopher of religions. My job is to compare and contrast. Let's not fight about this. Let's have a truce on the battlefields of history. And let's the scholars discuss and debate, and the prophets and the rabbis and the sages. So that seemed to go down quite well. You can listen to that talk. But several people started then mentioning the devil. This was the interesting bit when it got lively. There was one guy from Canada who said, well, the trouble is, of course, that the whole Western world is run by a satanic elite who are all Satanists, and they have been since the 1500s. And what's happening here is that the rest of the world's woken up, they're going to take them down. And I listened to this for about 5 or 10 minutes. I said, at the end, this sounds like QAnon. This was the QAnon theory.
My question here popped up. Has he spent a lot of time south of the border?
Well, that is a good question. I didn't ask that. But he was sort of coming from that perspective, that QAnon kind of perspective, which is a subtle take on the idea of the devil in eschatology. So in their view, these thinkers, the devil is there and is in the elites of the Western world, sort of the banks, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and his theory was it's the Anglican Church is definitely a satanic cult. Everywhere you looked, there was Satan lurking. So what I said after listening to all this, I said, we were commenting on each other's talks, right? And unfortunately, he hadn't been there for my talk. So I just said, look, you missed my talk, unfortunately. It was 5 a.m. in the morning in Canada, and he'd been off to sleep. So I said, what I call for was the secularization of the devil concept. And this is based on a book I wrote called Towards a Comparative Diabology. I've argued that as philosophers, it's too dangerous to leave the concept of the devil in the hands of religious fanatics. Very dangerous. Think of Putin invading Ukraine because they're all Satanists. That was his literal argument why he's invading Ukraine, because they're all Satanists. What does Putin have a clue about diabology or what the devil is or anything? Nothing. He's an amateur, And unfortunately, the people that spout this kind of satanic theory of history, they're amateurs. So what I said is what we should do is park this whole question of the devil and its role in our eschatology and examine it scientifically, philosophically, analyse it. I mean, many religions of the world, there is no devil figure. In Druidry, there isn't. In the Norse traditions, you've got Loki, but he's not really a devil. He's just a bit naughty. He's a trickster. In the American Indian tradition, you have tricksters. You don't have actual devils. So if you look at it philosophically, I think then we could begin to untangle this hysterical QAnon type thinking, which is also replicated in certain Islamic extremist groups where ISIL types waving their black flags are taking on the West because, the West is the devil and it's dangerous. I said I'd once attended a lecture by a Jewish sociologist called Ernst Gellner, one of the brightest people who survived the Holocaust, and you name it, kind of typical polymath of Jewish origin who's a sociologist, philosopher, etc. He gave a talk and he'd written a book about the devil, exactly saying what I'm saying. And he said, well, what does Freud have to say about the devil? Let's re-look at evil. So that was my contribution. And the Christian guy who turned up a bit late gave a talk, did a Christian prayer as well. We had interfaith prayers. The rabbi did one. And he agreed with me. He said, yes, let's add the insights of Hegel to this whole conversation. I mean, Hegel doesn't... Yeah, so where we agreed in the end, I think, is the devil stands for ignorance. And ignorance is what's causing the wars, the conflicts. You can have theological ignorance, economic ignorance, political ignorance, emotional ignorance. Look at people like Epstein. These are morally ignorant people, Trump. So the solution has to be intelligence and wisdom, i.e. philosophy. Anyway, I'm reporting back an 8-hour conference. That was my takeaway from it, and it was brilliant actually. And thank you to Moeen for organising it. If you want the whole details, you have to watch it as an independent thing when I get it together to post it. The other thing to say is today I did a podcast with my friend who runs a podcast called Guru Viking, who a couple of years ago reached out to me, seen some of my stuff and wanted to interview me, and he's quite a good interviewer. He gets stuff out of you. Lives on a houseboat in Derbyshire. And today he asked me, what's the meaning of solstice? He wanted a themed interview with the Druid. So that leads me to say what I think it's about, what this time is. I mean, again, you can watch his podcast for the details, but I pointed out that the ancients of not just the Celtic world, but the whole of Europe used to celebrate the solstices. The midsummer one, when the sun's at its height, longest day of sunlight, to this winter one, when it's at its weakest and the day is shortest of the whole year, and the night is very long. I think what the consensus is that this was a pan-European thing. My friend Peter Marshall sailed from Orkney down to Malta on a yacht, and he visited all the megaliths along the way, and he wrote a book called Megalithic Civilization. He argued that all the megalithic circles and monuments of old Europe show that we were one ultimate culture following the same faith, which was to do with the cycles of nature, cycles of the sun and the moon. And we built these huge temples to celebrate that. So they were celebration places to honour the passing of the sun through its cycles of life and death and rebirth. And today is the day on which the sun is at its weakest. It dies, as it were. But then hopefully it comes back tomorrow and then gets stronger for the next 6 months. No guarantee, but hopefully. So now I quoted the work of Sir James Frazer, who was a great Scottish anthropologist who wrote this amazing book called The Golden Bough, which I've just finished reading yesterday. It's 900 pages, and if you haven't read it, I strongly recommend take some time off to read it. And he goes into the meaning of the midwinter solstice in great detail, quoting huge references, and it's all throughout Scandinavia important. The peoples up there used to enjoy the midsummer and the midwinter with ceremonies. He links it to Balder and his death, because Balder, who's killed by mistletoe, our old friend Loki again, causing trouble, actually then comes back from death. So the point I made to the Guru Viking is that it's about death and rebirth. And Frazer's also very good on the fact that many, every primitive, so-called primitive culture has rituals of initiation for both men and women, boys and girls, normally in your early teens, where you are symbolically killed by the elders. You kind of have to fast for days. And in Australia, you're taken into the bush, and the men gather around and do the bull roar thing, making these terrifying noises, which you're not allowed to see the instruments. And it's the gods killing the victim. But then you're brought back to life. And you mysteriously come back to the tribe. And only after that are you regarded as an adult member of the tribe and allowed to marry. You have to have gone through that death and rebirth. And that seems to be pretty universal. And what the ancients thought is that that's what the sun is doing. It's the great spirit in the sky that reenacts this death and rebirth. And we have to do it, as we do it in our microcosm, we help the sun. So it's a sort of mutual magic going on. So that was, very interesting. And I've been reading this amazing biography of Frazer by Robert Ackerman. It's a detailed intellectual history. It's called J.G. Frazer, His Life and Work, an Intellectual Biography. And it's very detailed. He was at Cambridge. He studied all the facts as an anthropologist. Unbelievable. I'm trying to get hold of the 12-volume set with all the footnotes. This is just an abridgment. But, so I think that's the point of... And why is Christmas associated with it? Is because that was their way of celebrating the winter solstice. Christ comes back as the God of hope, of goodness, of love, is reborn at this time. Sorry?
Yeah, it's like solstice is also a way of preparation for new life as well, because you go towards the spring and the summer where things comes up, and solstice is also celebrating that preparation for new life.
It is. It's a time of hope. Yeah.
And Christmas in the Nordic, with the Nordic gods, is basically the winter solstice, which was a sort of looked upon as a heathen virtue, a heathen thing.
Heathen?
Heathen.
Or hidden?
Heathen.
Okay, heathen. Yeah.
Sorry. and
Ah,
to be able to get them over to the Christian belief, they sort of just moved that a couple of days and called it the birth date of Christ.
ah,
So they could still have
Cheating.
they cheated them into believing in a better world, whatever. So that was historically how they christened the Nordics.
With a sword, really.
Yeah,
well, the sword was the backup.
It was
Yeah,
quite
the
a,
backup.
quite a handy.
but Christmas
Ah.
came in as a handy tool as well.
Interesting,
The
yes.
winter, we got both.
And the Yule log you
Yule.
have as well, that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
You just put the Yule log on there from last year.
Yeah, several
Yeah.
of them.
That's what you're supposed to do. You keep the old one, so then we keep this one and put it on next year. There's a whole ritual that Frazer explained. Yes, and I did say in the podcast, by the way, about Mithras. It was actually Mithras's birthday, the 25th of December. The Christians in Rome thought Mithraism was a bit of a rival to them. Mithras was the god of light for the Zoroastrians. He was born on the 25th, so they thought, we'll have that, thank you very much. I have a hypothesis that St. Paul was probably initiated into the Mithraic mysteries.
No.
I've written about this in my book on the Tarot of the Gods, the entry on Mithras, who's a very important god, actually. And I think Paul uses the Mithraic metaphors, the armour of light, the sword of righteousness. This is all from Mithras. And where he came from, Tarsus in Asia Minor, was a haven of Mithraic initiation. It came from the east. So, working it out, it's a hypothesis only, that Paul was a Mithraic initiate who happened to be Jewish, culturally, and fine, he'd studied with his rabbis. But deep down he was a Mithraic guy, who suddenly saw a penny drop that Jesus was Mithras come to life, come to earth. He was the Son of God, Ahura Mazda. And he was sworn to secrecy on all this as an initiate. But he Mithraized the whole Judaism, Christian Messiah story.
A lot of trickery's gone on here.
So, it's a hypothesis.
Loki has had his hands in a lot of bowls.
That's one way of describing it, yes. I mean, it'll all be sorted out in the Heavenly Library when I get there, but, I'm just doing my best to share a few ideas. And it is weird. Not only is Christmas Day on the day of Mithras's birth, but the papal hat that they wear is taken from the Mithraic customs. That's taken from the Mithraic priesthood of the highest level. The papal ring is a Mithraic thing. And the highest grade, when you were a Mithraic initiate, you started out, you worked through 7 grades. The highest grade was to become the pater, the father. And you were given the mitre, the hat, the ring, and something else that also the popes use. So, I mean, work it out, guys. I mean, obviously it's what we call...
A shepherd's stick, was it?
Oh yeah, it was a shepherd's stick, yeah. That's the other thing that the popes have. And that came from Mithras as well. So I think what happened in Rome is that these two sects decided to marry up. Constantine won the battle, and so he was becoming emperor, and they did a deal behind the scenes. They say, look, you can carry on doing your Mithraic stuff, but we'll just Christianize it a bit. And Jesus was Mithras come to life,
Just let's confer a bit with Loki.
Well, there was
Can we
that
go?
too, and there were actually, there were German guards around, interestingly, in high places, guarding the emperors. So there were Germanic-speaking people already, even in that time. Caligula, not my favourite chap, had a Germanic private bodyguard, which let him down. He was assassinated by the Praetorians. So all this stuff is, Anyway, I went into it in that thing, but yeah, so the meaning of this time of year is very interesting. But I think we could sum up, whether you're a Mithraic follower or a Christian or a pagan or a Druid, or you follow, the Norse traditions of Asatru, it's good news because the sun is coming back and we can celebrate that and we can share presence and life, energy, life force and love. The other thing, just to report briefly, I had a another great chat with my Canadian coordinator for the Peace Studies Institute, Satyen Raja in British Columbia. We're planning the rebirth of the Wisdom Keepers Council, which he's been running. I'm just one of the people, but I'm going to be helping him with the books that we're producing for it. This is a network of elders, wisdom elders, that he's brought together. And we feel the planet's at a crucial time. We need to come together and discuss what to do, strategies and things. So that's coming back in January. I also gave a talk to the Liberal Democrat Philosophy Forum, which I've set up. Hitherto they haven't had a philosophy forum. I've revived the one I set up in Wales as a Liberal Democrat from France. And I think they're doing well. I mean, Ed is calling for an inquiry into Russia's influence on British politics, first guy to peep above the parapet and say that. I met the MP, Dr Al Pinkerton, who was a professor of international relations at the University of London, who resigned and now has become a full-time MP. He's our European spokesperson for the Lib Dems, very clever guy. And he gave us a talk, and I presented to him my proposal for the European Peace Agency that we should create. I want the Lib Dems to back this and adopt it as a project. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but I think the idea for it, well, let me say this now, so the European Space Agency exists, it's a thing, it gets £7 billion a year to do very advanced space research. It's like NASA for Europe. All the European nations are members, except a few rogue nations. Russia isn't a member, for example. They do their own thing in terms of space research. And to join it, you have to sign various ethical codes, like you're not going to use space research for weapons, militarism and all that, but for pure science. So I'm proposing we should create a European peace agency on the same model. Same nations who are members, and Canada, by the way, is an associate member, has very good, space science, and Britain is a full member still. Unlike the European Union, which we left stupidly, Britain is a member of the European Space Agency because we have brilliant scientists who are doing fundamental research on analysing what's out there in space, right? And I love that, but I'm saying that we need a European Peace Agency to find where peace is. We need to get telescopes on conflict around the world, see what's going on and how we can stop it. Because that's at least as important as finding out what's on the dark side of the moon, And I'm suggesting a budget of the same, £7 billion a year, which is nothing compared to what we're spending on arms. In the founding document, I've shown that Europeans have spent 1-point-something trillion pounds since 23 on just weapons. It's bonkers, and America spends that much or more every year. So let's have a European peace agency doing the fundamental research. Now, people say, well, what would it do? Well, it would try and end wars. It would have professional mediators, professional people that actually know how to run truce negotiations and ceasefire talks, not politicians. These politicians don't know what they're doing. And people like Trump thinking they're going to solve the Ukraine-Russia war in a couple of weeks. Wasn't it? Well, it's all just nonsense. I mean, he's creating wars. So we need the technical experts who can help with the Gaza Israel conflict, and there are people with the skills that could do that. And the same with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. They need to do it under the banner of a European Peace Agency, with a budget to match and to recruit the greatest peace thinkers and activists and researchers from all European countries, including Norway, Scandinavia. I know many experts that would be brilliant for this. Why aren't they already doing this? Why isn't this place already in place? I don't know, but I'm determined to bring it into being.
I just feel that as you grow up as I find it fascinating that you have, for example, like now, three people out of almost 8 billion humans. And most of us, we just want to live on peacefully and have a good life like anyone.
Yeah, and look after our families, not kids.
Exactly. Let only 3 people out of 8 billion absolutely create havoc. Now, if you look at, for example, the armies of Israel, they're sons and daughters of normal working people.
Yeah.
I mean, if...
Yeah.
But
some of them Holocaust survivors and stuff.
Exactly.
People who've lived through horrors.
Yeah, and
they've now been weaponised to hate the Palestinians.
To how? And
for
I
no
think
reason.
I think we're being doctrinised in how education is now. You are being told to be, do what you said. This is what we're telling you to do. Do not take a foot out there. So you become all in the same funnel.
Yeah.
And the power still sits up there. And you believe, and you've taught that you don't have the power, really, to do anything.
Sure, that's the danger of the world, and that's why I'm a rebel against that whole system. Because it's interesting in the military, the person that sees the overview is called a general. They have a general awareness of everything, logistics, weapons, strategy, feeding the troops, the whole thing. They're a general. Right? So I'm like a general of the peace movement. I'm coordinator of philosophers for peace. And I'm saying as a general of the peace movement that we have to do the joined up thinking and bring an institution into being, call it the European Peace Agency, purely scientific body, because war is a medical problem. It's a disease that is affecting humanity, and if we let it go on, it's going to kill us all, because there will be an accidental nuclear war. The statistics are there. My friends have computed this. We've had several near misses, including back in the 90s when Colonel Petrov managed to not fire missiles because it was a faulty computer. We don't know when that's next going to happen. One of the people, I'm not breaking confidences, one of the people on this, on our Wisdom Keepers Council, who's a brilliant scientist guy, polymath, he helped design the American computing system that runs their early warning responses if America's attacked by nuclear missiles. He's that important, right? And he was asked recently to rewrite them and update them because they haven't been updated for a while. So so what if he gets some of the coding wrong?
Yeah.
What if the program isn't completely thoroughly checked and it sends off missiles by accident? There's a new movie just come out about this on Netflix about a missile coming into Chicago, and they don't know what happened or who it was.
Yeah, I've seen that. It has got mixed critics apparently.
I thought it was well made. It's definitely worth it.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I did see it. It's worth it by an American. She was actually called Catherine something. She was married to James Cameron, of all things. And we'll talk about a power couple. She's a great filmmaker, and that film is one of the best I've seen for a long time. And it's very of the moment because it's about an accidental nuclear war.
And what do you do in that?
And the president is having to make the decision.
And
I won't spoil the ending.
You're old enough to remember also the Cuba crisis.
I was a little boy, but
I was a little bit bigger than you then.
Yeah. I mean, it was scary, I know that.
It was really scary.
I was too little. I was playing with my toy soldiers at the time.
I was walking to school in the morning.
Stuffed toys.
And thought it was. I was worried that maybe I wouldn't be down at store south of Bergen on an island. And maybe there won't be any home to get home to later on today. It's
right.
So it was very dramatic. It was very dramatic.
No, I mean, it's scary, and we're living through similar dangerous times.
Yeah.
So we have to be mature, we have to be rational, is my position as a philosopher of, that's finding common ground, common narratives, healing these splits. It's a medical thing, as I say. And my job is about healing these conflicts before they turn cataclysmic.
It's like I've been thinking about a thesis or like an idea. Obviously, in our life, it will probably not work. But at the moment, obviously, you have several continents and countries and different leaders. Everybody has their own idea and philosophy on how to do things. But it would in a way work probably better if you would more have like a council, a world council, instead of leaders, social, for each
rival nations.
Because
we tried that. It's called United Nations.
The trouble is the nations bit of that, because
Yeah.
they're all fighting all the time.
Yeah.
So there is such a thing. There are several attempts to create it. I used to sit on the board of a thing called the World Federalist Association, joined in Canada, and that's working towards a sort of world federal system where every nation would cede some of its power to a sort of central council, democratically run. Another friend of mine, Professor Glenn Martin, who sits on the World Intellectual Forum that I chair, he was just organising the World Parliament in India, which is attempting to do that. They created, and they've just had a meeting in December. I was invited to go, but didn't go. But they passed loads of things. So they're trying the parliamentary route, like a world parliament.
Because I think the most important would be sort of to keep in order to also make it work, is that everything that has to do with state, you can say, you have to keep religion out of it, because there are so many views and conflicts within even the same religions on who has the truth. And I think in order to actually make it happen, it needs to be very philosophically straight, but not based on a religion or this religion, because you get...
Sure. If you don't mind me saying so, that's a very Scandinavian approach. That's what you've done up north. You've sort of secularised everything.
State has nothing to do with religion at all.
Right. Well, that's the theory. That's not technically actually
No,
the
because
case,
you've
because
got
you've got your Lutheran dynasties
and,
in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, who, still retain a role in society and keep the basic ethical framework for the society going. So,
but not
I'm
like,
not sure about abolishing religion,
but not runnings of the country. For example, you have obviously you have your church, and you have these, like you said, different sections. But when it comes to sort of running of state, you can say state is supposed to be neutral, so that you won't bias towards any different groups, if you know what I mean.
Sure. No. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I kind of sympathise to some extent, but I've got slightly different perspective on it.
Well, there is supposed to be religious freedom. That's supposed to be that everywhere, and there's got to be a choice, a personal choice for each and every one, whether or not you believe in this or that, whatever you believe in.
It's up to your choice.
It should be up to your choice.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be ruled upon from the top leaders of your country that this is what you've got to believe in.
Well, one would love to live in a world of true religious freedom, and I think my only comment to that and to what you were saying is that so there was a chap in France, a philosopher called Destat de Tracy, who lived during the French Revolution and into Napoleon's era, who coined the word ideology. He was an intellectual and a philosopher, and one of the most important in France at the time. And he said, ideas are dangerous. You've got people on the extreme right, conservatives, want to go back to monarchy. You've got the extreme left, Robespierre, revolutionary types. You've got everywhere in between. And you've got the Christian lot who want to go back to France being a Christian monarchy again. You've got the Republicans that want to tear all the churches down and erase all religion from France, because that's Vive la République and all that. He said, in all this chaos, what we should be doing is doing what he called ideology, which is studying ideas scientifically. Ideas are so dangerous, they shouldn't be left to the fanatics. People of science, he was a scientist and a philosopher, he said, we need to study ideas, see where they come from. Like eschatology, that thing I was talking about, Messiah, that's an idea. The end of the world, that's an idea. Enlightenment, that's an idea. What I'm saying as a historian of ideas and a specialist in the history of religious ideas is we should study these things scientifically, make that available to everybody, hence the table, which we're going to move on to in a minute. And then only when they're educated are people genuinely free to choose. Because if you're choosing from a position of ignorance, you only know about, say, 2 boxes, and your parents say, if you don't choose that one, we're disowning you. Right? You know, and you can't marry anyone outside that box, for instance, or disown you. That's not freedom. So I'm all for let's spend the money that we're spending on weapons, trillions, on education. Let's get the periodic table in every school worldwide, in every university. Give people genuine information from which they can then choose. I personally choose them all, because my students used to say, which books are you in?
How about an international school for world leaders?
It's sort of been done. I mean, I've taught in a few places like that. There are schools, good ones. Eton comes to mind.
If you're going to be a doctor, for example, you've got to have an education as a doctor and training as a doctor. But if you're going to be a world leader,
you can just be
you
popular.
can just
you can fight your way up to the top like Stalin did, or Netanyahu. You can be a bruiser like Trump.
Yeah, like Trump.
Well,
Buy your way up.
Zero intellect. Yeah, no, that's wrong.
So there shouldn't. There should have been an international.
Well, that's what Pythagoras had that idea about 600 BC. He set up an academy to train future leaders, and he coined the word philosophy. Plato did the same. That's what the academy was supposed to be.
They didn't
all
have
the great youngsters of all of the Hellenic world came to the academy to study.
But you didn't have the instant world communication that we have today. Maybe
so the potential's amazing.
Here today.
Yeah, but that's what academia is supposed to be. I mean, I personally would like to bring in a law that no one can be a prime minister or a president unless they've at least got, I'd say, a doctorate, some kind of higher knowledge, some kind of, like you wouldn't let a doctor operate on you as a surgeon unless they've actually got a full qualification.
Absolutely.
So there should be. I was discussing with Satyen Raja actually. We should have a sort of diploma in ethics for world politicians.
But I also think also a test of. I mean, I've had jobs where I've had to have personality tests, for example.
Test periods.
How I am as a person, how I work with others, and so forth.
And you're monitored, and everything you do is...
Exactly, and I think if you would also have that, you would probably pick out people that clearly...
are unfit for office.
For office. If you
and
have
in the churches too, because you get some dodgy people in.
I mean, if you have a trait that is narcissism and lack of empathy or anything, you should really not.
Yeah, of course.
Sit on any top of anything.
No, I mean, as an absolute basic minimum, this is why I've called for a veracity oath for parliamentarians. They have to tell the truth by law, or they're out. As a doctor or a teacher, when you're a professional teacher, you're monitored, everything you do, all your lessons and stuff. But if you lie, I mean, if I cheated and gave a kid brilliant A grades because they paid me £500, I got them into Oxford, I'd be sacked. Corruption, you have to tell the truth. And as a doctor, a medical doctor, you have to do the same. Why don't politicians have to be stuck to those same standards of truth telling?
They should.
So obviously they should. I mean, we're on the same page here. So the other thing I want to say is that I've also been... Well, anyway, that's that project. The Lib Dem discussions about policy and ethics. And I will just say one thing, because people have followed my talks, they know about my concern about Russia and its influence of British elections and politicians and stuff. This chap who spoke to us, very clever, he's an academic among politicians, like there aren't that many of us, thank God we've got one in there, smuggle them in. And he has been liaising with the British Army, because one of the jobs of these politicians is you get attached to, we have different jobs. So this year he's been liaising with the Army. And he was taken to a secret base, I won't say where it is, in Britain, with a regiment that monitors full-time Russian hacking of Britain's infrastructure. There's an entire brigade of defending Britain's cyberspace, because what Russia is trying to do, and we know it's Russia, is hack into everything. Our banks, our infrastructure, the NHS, our universities. They succeeded in hacking into the British Library, which to me as a scholar is like but beneath contempt. There was a wonderful thing on the British Library website where you could look up every doctoral thesis that has been passed and examined in Britain in the last 80 years. Mine was up there, one of thousands. And I could then research, I could say, who's done a PhD on the Seishant in Zoroastrianism? And I could find out, some obscure guy in Cambridge. That's all crashed because the Russians hacked into it. Now that's nasty. That's psychological warfare against Britain. Sort of Putin saying, you're clever. No, you're not. We can smash you. So these guys are defending us from that. But why has it come to that? You know, we should be better than that. I personally have met Russian intellectuals. I've spoken in Moscow. They're clever people. Why are they doing that?
To remove the intellectual of Britain.
Yeah, but we should be making peace. The wisdom people of Britain should be making peace with the wisdom people of Russia and of Ukraine and France and China. And that's why I run the World Intellectual Forum. That's the other council I've got.
It's all about power and money. Unfortunately, the greed in some parts of humanity is scary.
Yeah, how much they got, they want more.
Yeah, because if you look at the history, you know, we're going back to, for example, the solstice and things. It was about life. It was about food. It was about collecting life, birth, death.
But it was the whole tribe
following.
Coming together, celebrating,
Exactly.
with the Druids officiating, doing the prayers.
But the problem is, the minute value came into things, gems, gold, things that had of values, that's when you started to get the battles of who would rule. The rulers would have the money and the power, and that struggle there is just escalating and escalating and escalating, and then we started creating worse ways, more money and more resources in how we could eradicate each other more efficiently and more horridly.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Middle Age, for example, you know, how they would torture people in such a gruesome way. I was like, you have to have a very sick fantasy to figure out what they did.
Sure.
But at the same time, same time though, they created
beautiful
such
cathedrals,
yeah,
and wonderful
but the
art.
fear that they could install in people as well. It's a way of controlling and power, because obviously.
Can I give you an example of
Scary.
what you're saying, because this is very interesting. So the other thing I should say, and I was going to mention, is I've just finished this week a book I've been reading for the last 3 months. I like to take books slowly and read them thoroughly and look up my notes and all that. And this one is one of the best historical studies I've ever done. It's called The Distant Century by Barbara Tuchman, a historian, 600 pages. And it's a study of the 14th century, from 1300 to 1400. And it's focused mainly on Western Europe, particularly on France and England, because that was the time of the 100 Years' War, and we were doing horrendous things to each other.
It's absolutely horrendous.
It was the Black Death as well, so nature killed a third of the people of Europe. And then she follows the life of one particular French aristocrat called Aigoueron de Coucy, who came from Picardy. And he fights in lots of battles. He's captured at one point, I think at the Battle of Poitiers, by the English, taken to England as a knight to ransom, worth a lot of money, falls in love with the daughter of King Edward III, Princess Philippa, and they marry. So he lands on his feet, actually, because he was very handsome and dashing and a great knight, and spoke fluent French and English, and was highly cultured and intellectual and all that. And a good knight. He was like, a proper knight, whereas a lot of them weren't. They were behaving in terrible ways. He dies in the end of the book, which I've just finished. Tragically, he's conned into going on a crusade against the Turks with a French army of 20,000 knights and all their, every knight had 2 guys to carry the weapons, another guy on another horse and so on. So there was about 5 per knight, hangers-on. But unfortunately it was an absolute disaster, and typical medieval French blackguards decided to charge uphill at a force they thought was the main Turkish force. They thought, we can get them. Charged uphill on their horses, got tired, realised when they got to the top of the hill and were being surrounded and shot at arrows that there was the entire Turkish army up on the next hill.
Oh my.
And they were cut down, massacred. Very few survived, including poor old Kusi. It was called the Battle of Nicopolis. It was on the Danube. There was a fort at Nicopolis. It was in 1397 from memory, and it was the worst ever defeat by a Christian army in the Crusades since the Battle of Hattin, and it was the last one. That was it. And that's why the Turks then got the whole of Southeast Europe, because of losing that battle. And Kusi knew it was a disaster. He told these young hotheads, do not charge up that hill. We will lose. Stay here, we can defend. Let's see how many there are first. They didn't listen. They said, no, we can take down a few little Turks. Arrogance, racism, led to the catastrophe. So anyway, in amongst that book, so I'm reading that book and it's absolutely gripping. And then I get to the bit where the French king, Philip the Fair, Philip IV, he's called, is fighting with the Pope, Boniface VIII. And the king is saying, you don't have a right to anything in France. I want all the taxes from the church. They come to me, I'm the king. This is my kingdom. The Pope is saying, it doesn't work like that, actually. We're independent of you. We're the universal church. Taxes given by parishioners at or offerings to the church, they come to me in Rome, and we have our own system, thank you very much. So they were fighting. They were disagreeing with each other. And it got serious. And the king sent agents to Rome, secret agents, who manhandled, were going to arrest, and he'd accused, Philip had got the French court in Paris to accuse this Pope of everything under the sun. Sorcery, witchcraft, diabolism, simony, corruption, you name it, threw the entire work at him. I don't think he was a particularly bad Pope. I don't think any of that was true. He was just a normal Pope, right? And so, anyway, this French agents tried to arrest this guy and stuck him in a prison in Rome. Like, this is unheard of, right? And then the people of the town rebelled and rescued him. But he was so upset he died 3 days later. Oh. Pope died. Now, what's interesting about this, why I'm mentioning it, that Pope was a great fan of the Knights Templars, who were his supporters and his shield wall against defeat. They worked directly for the Pope. They had castles and everything all over Europe. They were trained warriors who were dedicated to God and to the Pope. And the minute that Pope died, Philip turned on the Templars. In Paris, he arrested the Knights Templar leader and he stole all their money, which was held in trust. It was like a banking thing. That's what that king did. So this is an example of fighting for power between the Pope and a king. In this case, the king won. The Templars were tortured. I've been to the Vatican. I've seen at a special exhibition. They've got the original records on scrolls, which they wrote down as the guys were being tortured. They were accused of witchcraft, of devil worship and everything. It was all fake. So that's what they were doing back then. Yeah. I'm happy we've had an enlightenment since then.
Yes.
That we've had Kant and we've had, even Luther did his bit to say, no, Pope, let's move on from the Middle Ages. Let's try and do reason a bit.
That's why it's so sad that a certain country in the Western world has gone back to exactly doing that.
Well, it's trying. I mean, Russia, I think, is the
better at it.
Is the the cause of a lot of that, with their agents going to America and infiltrating their system.
But also, at the end of the day, Putin himself is at the end of the day one person, one human, and obviously. I mean, he must be. I mean, he has been paranoid as well for God knows how many years, because he's thought, he's been poisoning.
He was officially
his allies.
Paranoid because
exactly.
he's a KGB guy.
Exactly, and
that's how they operate.
Yes, and then he's also at the top of a country and leading a country with probably quite a bit of mental issues, and I'm thinking that is a very dangerous
Yeah, I mean,
notion.
him and Trump are, I mean, I think Putin is probably more intellectual than Trump.
Intellectual.
He speaks 5 languages. He's more.
He's got more of a brain.
He'd
But
be
you
able
have
to interject in our philosophy club and say a few things. But
yeah, but you have
his soul is a bit twisted. That's why he's
exactly,
such
but
a
also the line of what you can say, genius and madness. You know, it could go.
They're interconnected.
Yes, and if that
Yes.
keels off, it gets
Well, it's dangerous.
Dangerous.
Maybe that's what happened with the stable genius in the States. It's just dipped over.
He's never been intellectual, my dear.
He's clear, you know, he's a stable
He's just
genius.
had a lot of money, or Daddy has had a lot of money.
He's, I think.
Let's drop the bugger.
Let me
Bringing
make.
him up, though.
Let me raise one other interesting aside before we move on to our periodic table, about Odin or Woden, because as you know I'm an etymologist, I love languages, and I've been working with my Qabalah Runes still, which we're going to do one at the end of this meeting, and I was looking up the origin of the word Wednesday in English. Woden's-day. It comes from Woden.
Odin's dog.
In Norwegian, you say Odin's dag. Right. Now, I discovered a fantastic word, which is from the same root as Woden in Anglo-Saxon, which is woodship. And it means divine madness or divine inspiration. Because Woden, the name, and I think it's true of Odin, comes from this divine furor that comes upon you when you see ultimate things. You get a glimpse of Odin's mind, and you get filled with incredible thoughts and so on and so on. Knowledge, divine knowledge. And I was thinking that it's also called wodness, W-O-D-N-E-S. This was the old Anglo-Saxon word for madness. Before the word madness existed, we said, oh God, they've got wodness. It means they've been touched by Odin, which is a blessing and a curse. My daughter was touched by Odin. She was, people couldn't relate to her because she was so on a different plane of being that she had wodness. And what I want to do as a mental health professional, as a counsellor, is I'm going to suggest there should be a new thing, we'll call it wodness, for people that have like a divinely inspired madness. And they should not be stuck on drugs, put in mental hospitals. They should be listened to, taken to beautiful places in nature, and given special treatment. Let's see what they're channeling. Let's see what Woden is working through them with. Let's treat them with respect. So anyway, I just wanted to share that etymology. But some people, so I'm happy. I think Trump and Putin are touched with wodness. They have moments of flashes of stuff, but they don't have the solid educational background to be able to anchor and ground it into goodness. They're like a sort of, like my computer, they've got a dodgy connection that keeps flickering on and off. And with Trump, it's so visible, you never know what he's going to do. He's going to ban this or attack that or shoot these people or, it's mad. And the same with Putin. Who's he going to invade next? Poland? Like he's always threatening, him and...
The Baltic.
Yeah, the Baltic.
It's wodness. So the solution is more genuine religious education. So let's move on to our periodic table and see what we can learn from that. And imagine that Putin and Trump are joining our philosophy club. Yeah, hello, people. Okay, what one are you going to go for? What can help?
Philosophy, Idealism, 131.
Right, that's a good one. I like that. Yes, excellent. Okay. And what one have you got?
I'm going for philosophy as well,
Yeah.
for personalism and spiritualism.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
What numbers have they got?
145.
Yeah. Right. Well, those are both very exciting. Let's do the idealism one first, 131. So this is a technical name among philosophers that it's used to describe a sort of a school of thought in philosophy that says that the idea is the primal thing. I mean, there was a famous Irish idealist philosopher called Berkeley, and his way of describing it was that even when I'm not there to see it, in the forest, up the mountain, it's being seen by God. It's still in the mind of God. Everything in the world, the planets, the stars, space, every angel, demon, human who's ever lived and ever will, is in the mind of God. And that all-encompassing divine mind is what we all have a little bit of inside us. That's what our minds are. None of us have the full scope of that because we couldn't cope. It would drive us bonkers. But we're given enough that we can bear with. And so the whole universe is a sort of thought in process, flowing from the mind of God. Now that same idea is not unique to Berkeley. I mean, he came to it in the 1700s, but he was a Christian idealist. It's a long tradition in Christianity because in the Christian faith it's said that God is the Logos, which is another way of talking about the divine mind. So God is embodied in this divine mind, which philosophy has been studying, and they believe that Christ embodied that to perfection. So he was the absolute Logos in human form. And even though his body has gone, his soul, his Logos still remains. That's what Christian mystics do. But the same idea was reached in Eastern thought, in Hindu thought. So in the yellow boxes, they're all mostly a variety of idealists. And it was associated with what's called the Upanishads, which is one of the oldest religious scriptures of humanity from the 1000 BC. These are interesting conversations between yogis, teachers, and students. The students ask a question like, what is the soul? And then the yogi gives a kind of discourse. And one of them is, what's the soul? What's the absolute truth? He says, go and get a nut. Brings it back. Okay, cut open the nut. Oh, I see seeds inside. Okay, cut open one of the seeds. Okay, I see little seeds. Cut open one of the little ones. I don't see anything inside it. That is Atman. That is your soul. That is the absolute truth. You're the same. That thing that's in there, that nothingness, is also in you. That's your same ultimate union with everything. And that is the divine mind. That is Brahma, the creator, who is in everything. You, me, everything. And our duty is to find that in ourselves. So that's the essence of Hindu philosophy as an idealist tradition. And there have been many great philosophers in India who've commented on this and written commentaries on the Upanishads. Shankara was one of the most famous. It's there implicit in the pagan religions as well, because in the the Norse traditions, the runes, Odin creates the runes from his own journeying, from his mind. He's the god of wisdom. He has thought to do the heavy stuff. But Odin is the intellectual of the gods, and he invents the runes through his wisdom, and through the magic of the goddess who's there. So and Plato came along in Athens, founded the academy, and again he wrote his dialogues which proposed this idea of idealism, and we're associating the word idea. That's what Plato said everything comes from. So before the cup was physically made, somebody had the idea of the cup. Somebody invented, a long time ago, sitting around a campfire, 30,000 BC. Oh no, let's have a cup.
A physical object of an idea.
Yeah, and then it becomes the object. Somebody dreamt up the idea of a car, a boat, everything. My parents fell in love and invented let's have a child. Let's call him Thomas. I came out of their love and their idea of each other And we all did. So that's idealism, which is a profound, I mean, I could mention other great thinkers, Coleridge in England, Fichte in Germany, Goethe, Rudolf Steiner, you know, and Hegel, who was an idealist, and a profound thinker from Stuttgart. So, you know, it's a living tradition. Also, it's in Islam, some of the greatest Islamic philosophers, Ibn Sina, Ibn Arabi, Suhrawardi, Mullah Sadra, they're all forms of idealists. And in Judaism, the greatest Jewish philosophers, like Maimonides and so on, they are also idealists. So I don't see why we can't just all get on and agree. You know, that's why philosophy departments exist in universities. That's why I studied at university and taught. Because it's good news, ultimately, because it's empowering yourself. You know, you have that divine gnosis within you. And all of us, we have that inner goodness. And because we know that that guy has it too, I'm not going to harm or hurt that person in thought, word or deed. And Buddhism also has an idealist, strongly idealist streak. Buddhism is obviously the red boxes here. And the word Buddha means the divine mind, the Buddhi. All a Buddha. Sorry. So, what a Buddha is somebody that's activated their divine intellect, their Buddhi. And I've just been studying, actually, the 10 great disciples of Buddha. This is fun. And working out their names and dates. There's a tradition that Buddha had 10 really major disciples. He had thousands of disciples, but 10 really big ones. And each of them had a different function or a different specialism they were famous for. Sariputta was famous for wisdom. Maudgalyayana was famous for his supernatural abilities. Mahakshashyapa was famous for ascetic practices. Subhuti was famous for his knowledge of shunyata, which is the divine emptiness, which I was talking about earlier. Like, that's amazing. That was his specialism, like nothingness, right? Which is where you find the divine mind.
I could do that.
Puna was famous for preaching. Katyayani was famous for debate and explanation. It's always good to have one of them on the team, because if somebody comes and says, what's what? And you say, go and talk to Katyayani, he can explain. Aniruddha was famous for clairvoyance, so he could keep a check on everyone where they are all the time. Upali was famous for observing the precepts, because to run an organisation you have to have rules, and it doesn't work if people don't stick to them, so you have to observe them. Rahula, who was Buddha's son, and joined late, but he was famous for modesty and training. And then finally Ananda, who was famous for hearing and remembering. So he listened to all Buddha's sermons and remembered them all. And at the first council, when Buddha had died, passed on to Nirvana, Ananda said the whole thing from memory, and it was written down. That's why we know the teachings. So that's a sort of formal structure, but the essence of the thing is the ideal of enlightenment, of Buddhism, is Buddhi itself. So anyway, I think it's jolly exciting. And by the way, I want to write a book when I have time, comparing the 10 great disciples of Buddha with the 13 great disciples of Jesus. We know the names, and Mary Magdalene is the 13th, and I want to compare and contrast. Like, we can have two teams, and I'm arguing they should cooperate on planetary salvation, not rivalry. I mean, those 10 are good to have on your side, I would say.
It'd be amazing if they used the amount of money for war and destruction to sustainability for our own planet, our own home.
Well, that's the plan.
Destroying it.
That's the plan. Yeah, that's what we're working on.
Quite
that's
nice,
what the philosophy plan is. Yeah, that's what this philosophy club is about. And what I'm sure will happen, it's just taking a while. Right, let's move on to your one. What was your one?
It was personalism and spiritualism, 145.
Okay, 145, yes. Did you have any questions about the idealism one?
No, ideally no.
Not, okay. What is the word for idealism in Norwegian?
Idealism.
Same word, yeah, okay. Good. And there have been some great philosophers particularly Arne Næss, who was a kind of idealist. But he believed that the idea of the divine mind also operates in nature, plants, animals, whales, and therefore ecology is another way of studying the divine at work. I think he's right. And I've been studying an amazing book about Darwin's botany and how plants show the divine intelligence at work. They're so complicated, so sophisticated, like you couldn't make them up. They're just mind-blowingly
A
complicated.
tree has a more complicated DNA structure than what we have, and that's a tree.
Really? Well, there you are. You've proved my point. I mean, nature is unbelievably complex. Here's the book, which I recommend to people. And because Sophie was a relative of Charles Darwin, indirectly through her mum, you know, she loved plants and animals. This book is called Darwin's Most Wonderful Plants by Ken Thompson. And it's looking at what we, obviously 100 years later, we know a lot more about plants than in Darwin's day, but he was really a pioneer. For instance, he was looking at how do creeping vines stay upright? What do they cling to? How does it work? How can plants climb up a sheer wall? What's going on, you know? He was talking about all different kinds of detailed studies of plant life, and this guy, who's a brilliant naturalist, is updating and saying Darwin was ahead of the game on lots of things, you know, we're just catching up with him now. So that's Arne Næss and the greening of idealism, if you want, which I run the Green University, so I'm on that team. Right, let's look at your one.
145.
145, there we are, yes. Now this is a very exciting one. They're all my favourites, every single one of them. This one is definitely. So it's sort of two things. It's spiritualism with an E is the French equivalent of spiritualism in the Anglo-Saxon world, which is 97. It's a kind of religion in which mediums talk to the spirit world and get messages. And it became very important in the 1840s. And there are spiritualist churches all over America and Britain and Wales and whatever. I've been to several of them and I'm fascinated by what they find, how we can prove it's genuine. I was very disappointed. I went to the spiritualist church in Brighton after Sophie died and thought, you know, and the guy on the platform, you know, I thought, surely she'll send a message to me. Zero. Absolutely nothing. He didn't pick up that here's a guy whose daughter's just died. So, you know, I suspend judgment as to how genuine it all is. In the French world, it was also important, spiritualism, and it was developed more as an intellectual thing, but the similar idea that when the soul dies, you go into an afterlife and you can still be contacted. There was a chap called Alan Kardec who developed this in Paris. So that is a tradition in the French world and in Latin America as well. It's married to this idea of personalism, which was an idea that is important in French spiritual circles, which is that what makes us important as human beings is our individuality, our personhood. And that's why we shouldn't be abused or stuck in prison or tortured, like you were saying, you know, used to happen. No, the goal of philosophy, says personalism, is to generate creative, intelligent, humane and wise human individuals, aware of our limits, but stretching from the mundane to the super-mundane worlds. And the purpose of religion is it can provide a bridge whereby this can be achieved. So all bona fide and authentic religions are like a sort of passageway that we can walk between our personal problems and issues to solving them at a deeper level. And some of the thinkers associated with this I mentioned. Maine de Biron, who was a Frenchman in the 18th century, 19th century. Nicolas Bonneville, who was a Parisian intellectual at the time. Victor Cousin. And then later on, some important Catholic theologians, Emmanuel Mounier, Jacques Gilson, and Maritain. And they said that that's what the purpose of Christ's teaching was to empower the personhood of us all, our individualism. So what's interesting is that with Christianity, suddenly these people appear in history, like normal people, not kings. John, Thomas, Luke, like they weren't rich and powerful. They were students of one particular spiritual teacher. And those names have carried on ever since. I'm a Thomas, you know. You're a Jan, right? So you're that's Norwegian for John, is it?
Janus, Jon, yeah.
Yeah, it's connected. And Bente is from where? The name?
Well, it is an abbreviation of Benedicte, which is...
From Benedict.
Yeah, but it's a few, Benedicte.
Bishop.
Yeah, it's like...
means good speaking, well speaking.
Didn't they?
Yeah, well spoken. So the individual comes into history, and what Christ was saying is everybody matters. In my ashram, I don't care if you're a rich, powerful person, you've got 1 million slaves and a palace, or you've just got like the shoes you're standing in, or even no shoes, you're still valuable, and the poor matter. That was his message, was to bring the divine grace to everybody at every level of society, every walk of life, whether you're crippled or, you know, and disabled in some way. And that's the miracle of Christ's love, I think, and that's what the personalists say. They say that that's the beauty of that teaching. God came into history, or the Logos came into history in that particular teacher, whereas before, knowledge was a sort of elitist thing. You had to afford it. I mean, you couldn't really get to Plato's Academy unless you had a few million drachmas and could afford it, you know. Much as I love Plato, it was a bit elitist, you know. Slaves weren't allowed in, for instance.
In a way to also, I suppose, like you said, having an idea can be dangerous as well. And in a way of doing such, you also control the masses, because there was a bigger group of poverty than the elite.
So you didn't let them get much education.
No, and you could keep them.
Yeah, which is why the Trumpites want to shut all the schools down. Yeah. They want to stop education. It's why in Russia now I can't give free and open lectures like I used to in Moscow. I'll be arrested, put in prison. The freedom of speech is the first thing that goes when a dictator takes over. And it was the same in the classical world. But there were philosophers who fought back, and Plato was, you know, a shrewd guy. And if you read the text, he was on the side of us, you know, and he, but. So anyway, that's what personalism is. It's a living tradition in France, in the sort of Catholic worker circles, who work with the poor in Paris or wherever, and try to, and also in the Latin American church, where they've worked with the sort of option for the poor. It's liberation theology is the technical name for it. That's a branch, if you want, of personalism. And also in the Lutheran Church, Schleiermacher really was advocating this. He was the greatest theologian in 19th century Germany, a friend of Hegel, who wanted to get that idea out to the masses.
So the idea of that, regardless of rich or poor, at the end of it, we all need each other. And that kind of gives you the idea that this should be for everyone, because we need each other. You know, if you're rich, if you don't have the potter, you might not have a lot of money, but he creates your
pot.
your pots and your cups, and
Sure.
you know, it's that.
Yeah, we all need each other for society to function. And that's why earlier I was talking on the podcast and I talked about Pierre Roux, the mayor of Boussac, who coined the word socialism. And I've been reading his books in French, which have never been translated to English. He was the most important intellectual in La Creuse. And he wrote this amazing book called On Humanity, De l'Humanité, in French, which I've read. And he says that hitherto, you know, there have been amazing people and great movements of thought, but we've never yet awoken to our potential as one humanity. We have to come awake as one humanity because we all share the same problems. We all have certain needs, and so we have to think of a society solution to all this, not individually.
No.
You know, we're all like, you know, everybody deals with poverty and it's scrabbling around and whatever, and it's tragic. So many people are scrabbling around in poverty, serious poverty. Well, that was what he said. That's why we need socialism, as he called it, whereby we think collectively about collective solutions. So, yeah, he was a pioneer in the 19th century. He didn't agree with Marx because he was an idealist philosophically. Was Pierre Roux? He said socialism will only work if we do it under the spirit of the collective wisdom of all humanity. He was a Christian, a Freemason, a Buddhist, a Pythagorean, a genuine philosopher. Bless him. And he was also the boyfriend, lover of George Sand, the great novelist who lived.
Chopin was as well.
Well, I know I think when she met Chopin, she ditched old Pierre.
Oh, poor Pierre.
Poor Pierre. He didn't have such good tunes. You know. But he used to go to the parties. She had great parties up at Nohant, the manor. I've read her biography in detail, 700 pages, and the descriptions of the parties are cool. You should read them.
He wore a suit and smoked a cigar. Oh my.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. Okay, so look, Victor Hugo, by the way, can I just give him a plug? He's in the list of famous people who were personalists and spiritualists. He followed the spiritualist path. He believed in life after death, and he did seances and things. And his father had been a general in Napoleon's army, old man Hugo, and was quite an important one. But of course they lost, and so the father lost all his status and wealth and money and all that. And Victor was brought up by the mother, who lived in Brittany, and he was a very sensitive boy, and he wanted to become a writer and a poet, and to tell about the problems of the poor. That's why Les Miserables he wrote. And I discovered recently in the library here in the village, because we have all his collected poems, which I've been reading, and he wrote 2 poems towards the end of his life. One called Le Fin du Diable, The End of the Devil, and the other, and it's an epic. And the other poem is called just Dieu, God. They're brilliant poems, full of incredible metaphors, images, and they tell the story of how the devil eventually is defeated. He didn't finish them. And I've had a thought I ought to try and finish them for him as a poet.
That would be actually quite cool.
That'd be quite fun, wouldn't it? Because they deserve to be better known. I'd never heard of them before. You know, we all read Milton, Paradise Lost. What about Victor Hugo's The Story on the Devil? So, anyway, he was a great guy. He lived in Guernsey, and we're trying to get a peace garden in his house on Guernsey. And I've also got Carl Jung in this, because Carl Jung was a... He called it individualism. Individuation is the purpose of therapy when you reach your true self. You stop trying to be other people, you become who you truly are. So Jung was a great, great guy, in my opinion. Right, so that's very exciting. And I reckon there's about 2 million people that have followed this path, but you know, one could debate numbers. Right, I think we should move on and look at our runes. That's my sense here. Any comments about that before we do? Questions?
Not from me.
No? Okay, why don't you take a rune, shuffle them up. So these, we're going to do the Qabalah Runes. It's just behind you over there on the...
This one?
Yeah. Can I have that? Thank you so much. Great.
How many does one take?
One.
One.
Just-
All of.
Yes, I'll do one as well. We'll have 3. Oh, I'm sure you had that recently.
Yeah, it was here last time, I think.
Yeah.
Should I take a new one?
No, it's fine. We'll go with that because it's very Christmassy.
Yeah. X.
It's Gifu. Gifu, G, the letter G. And it stands for the gift or giving. And that's what we do at Christmas and Saturnalia. You know, life is about giving, and we are, we're only here because people have given to us over our lifetimes. And then we give in return. So in the Qabalah Runes, I've married up the Hebrew Hamito-Semitic alphabet and scripts with the Norse runic ones. So I'm going to explain a bit because this is pioneering stuff. Most people say that the Indo-European language family has nothing to do with the Hamito-Semitic family. So you've got 2 great language families. I'm saying nonsense, because all alphabets have the same sounds. G is in them all. G. In both the Hamito-Semitic and the Indo-European. And the point of the Qabalah and of the runes is the G force has a particular meaning. G. It's quite an active sound. It's not a little... not an S. No, it's a G. Right.
Think of the G-force.
I'm coming to that. It's got the G-force in it. That's what we talk about when we do, like, take rockets up to space. You know, the G-force. So it's about going. It's about energy, or energia, and to give to somebody is an action. You know. Now it's an important sound. Let me find the right page in this book. Seems to have vanished. Thought I had it, and then there, well, it's gone. Right. It's life.
With a G in it.
Yeah,
Gun.
it is. Yeah, it's gone. Yes. So. Gimel is the name in the Hebrew alphabet, and that's shaped like a camel, and it has the numerical value of the word for 3. It has a meaning for being up high. The Gaon was the term used for the head of all the rabbinical academies, and the Geula is a benediction which follows the Shema in the morning and evening service. And it means basically redemption. Ga'al means he has redeemed. He has redeemed Israel. So it's the gift to the people of redemption. Gevura means strength. So in the Qabalah, the Tree of Life, which I've got a picture of, we've got a mental picture of it, it's these 10 Sephiroth arranged like a Christmas tree. And in the middle section of the Tree of Life are 2 opposing Sephiroth. One is Chesed, which means loving kindness. That's the power of yes. Yes, yes, no problem. Come in. Yes, I wasn't doing anything, just, you know, like... it's the saying yes, right? But that's... and being compassionate and all merciful. But then there's Gevura, which is the saying of no, which is sternness, saying, actually, I'm teaching a class right now, you know, I'm busy, come back later. You know, it's the doctor saying, I can't see you now, I've got another patient or whatever. So we need that force as well in life, the capacity to say no. And Gevura is what provides boundaries and borders so that people don't walk all over us. We need that as well. And my blessed daughter was so hesed, it's not funny. Everything was, oh yes, please, yes. But she didn't realise there are dangerous sharks in the Sea of Brighton, and they will get you if you're just walking around all hesed. She needed the Gevura force, which is the G force. So, and of course it's in our word, in Indo-European languages, it is in the word God. So God is the all-good force, which is the source of everything we're given. And it's interesting that this gift, the symbol of this rune, is linked to Odin and the sacrificial act of giving, discovering the secrets of the rune. It's probably the origin of the lover's kiss when you send an email and put an X after it, or an XX. This is this rune, right? Can I have it? Just to show people. So this is the rune Gifu, and it's a beautiful loving thing. And it's the rune of God, who is the good one, who gathers us together. So all those words, God, good, and gather, come from this rune.
Great.
That's from the same rune, yes. Also the word guru, which means someone who's got that force, that heaviness in them. Indo-European roots, ged, G-E-D-H, meant to unite or join. And it's there in the word goddess, of course. And a Gwena was a woman in the Indo-European language. The wife of a god is Gna, a goddess. So, yeah, it's a good rune to get. Also, I'm not going to share the whole text, there's a lot of it, but it's in the word gravity. We saw it's in the word guru, which means heaviness, so gur means something that's heavy, and gravity is the force that explains what that G-force is. It is, so the G-force is the divine energy behind the metaphysics and the physics of creation that keeps everything together on Gaia, the Mother Earth, who is very heavy. So what does it mean? Why does it come in? Well, it's come in because we're asked to grow, we're asked to appreciate that G-force. You've worked all over the world with heavy ships and transport, and now you've ended up here in Little Patet, but you brought that energy with you, Let's see where it goes next, and what we can grow here in this magical centre of Gaul. Oh, Gaul.
Gratitude.
Good.
Definitely.
What?
Goodness
Gratitude.
gracious me.
Gratitude is the secret of all this. In the Druid religion and the Druid alphabet, Ogam, G is represented by Gort, which is the ivy, which is all over this village. Gort is one of the fastest growing, most tenacious of all field plants, and it was associated with Dionysus, the god of vegetation. And the climbing vines that give you ayahuasca, if you're in Latin America, that's a species of this kind of thing. And that's what Darwin was studying. How do they wrap themselves around everything and grow feet every couple of days, The ivy was the symbol of Dionysus, and you wear an ivy crown if you're a Dionysian. And that's another thing about this time of year. We should let our hair down, have a glass of wine or two. And Dionysus and Bacchus are also respected by the Druids, It's not only grief and suffering and torment in life, it's about pleasure and enjoyment and ecstasy. So I think that's what that rune is coming and meaning. Okay, what's your one, madam? Ah, well, there we are. So this is the letter T, Tibaz. And that's, another fantastic rune. In the Druid world, it's Tine, meaning holly. And the ninth letter of the Hebrew alphabet is this rune. So it's a very definite sound. Tiwaz was a god of warriors, and the spear is his thing. Tet in the Hebrew alphabet is the T of Torah, the T of teaching, and also of Tov, which is the Hebrew word for goodness. So one of the greatest sages of Judaism was called the Baal Shem Tov, which means the master, Baal Shem, of the name Tov, of goodness. So if you know the name of goodness, nothing can harm you, and you can help heal people. It's the secret name of God, goodness. So Tov is also there when in the Bible it says, and God created the world and he does everything in the sequence of days. And at the end of each day it says, and he saw that it was good. So he created the light and he saw the light was good. That's Tov. I've always liked that bit of Genesis because, it's really important that we remember that. However bad things get and however nasty some people are and however stupid, we have to hold on to the fundamentals that life is good and that God is good, the creator. So obviously Thomas, my name, was the rock of the church of knowing, as Peter was of the rock of faith. So I argue that Thomas was the Gnostic disciple who wanted definite knowledge. That's why he was always asking Jesus awkward questions like, how do I know you're really alive now? Etc. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There must have been much more. And that's why I've done this commentary on the 6 Gospels, including the Gospel of Thomas. And it means a twin, the name. And ta often stands for things that are out, definite, action, outer things, because that's to do with real reality, if you want, concrete, etc. So it's an important thing. I mean, you need to, in your life, you're trying to get your act together.
Indeed.
And create a hotel, right? Yeah. So you need to get that T-force working with you. Be definite in what you're doing. Don't shilly-shally. Don't say, I'll do that. No, I'll do that. No, I'll do this one. No, I'll do that one. No, go for it. Decide what you need, what you want, and then manifest it.
Don't go for the dilly-dally.
No. I mean, you can do all that on one level. Obviously, we're all floating angels, but when it comes to the real world and action, then I need to fix this room this month. I need to fix that wall this month. You've got 2 fantastic workers and more who can do it for you. Just, manifest it. Anyway, I say a lot more about tea in here. It's jolly exciting. And in the Druid traditions, it's the holly, which is the other sacred tree we bring in at this time of year. I must go and get some holly. Tinne. And it's got little sharp points, but it's an evergreen, it never dies. And those little pricks are there as signs for us to wake up, and get on with stuff. So even if things seem to be going wrong, we can turn them into something right by learning from the holly. And that's the symbol that, like, even if you're being crucified, something's good's gonna come out of it. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, what Jesus must have thought. But he had faith, and it turned out for the best.
Yeah, we actually found some holly on one of our walks in one of the forests around here, with nice red berries.
Did you bring any back?
No.
Next time you find it, do bring a clump back for me.
I will probably go. We went to the area with all these beautiful stones, or stone giants of the goddess. And there were loads of hollow bushes with red berries.
Is this up on the Pied-Germart, the big hill?
Yeah.
There's hollies up there.
Loads.
Oh right, well bring a few back if you go back again.
Will do.
That'd be nice. And in the Druid poem known as the Song of Emergin, there's a line that says, "I am a battle-waging spear." And holly formed one of the hardest spear points made of wood known to the ancients. They would partly burn it to get it really even stronger. So holly was also making the wheels which powered their chariots, because the Celts were using chariots at the same time as the Trojans were. It was their preferred form of warfare. And holly being so strong, they made the wheels out of holly, which was interesting. And later, after iron was mastered, they put iron tyres on them. But before that, they were just holly. Holly tea is a very stimulating drink, apparently, which can get rid of poisons and fevers. But you have to know how to use it. So the Holly and the Ivy is a famous carol that we used to sing at home at this time. So yes, if that's, I think, the interpretation I would come up with on this rune. Any questions?
No, I just remember when you talked about the disciple Thomas. In Norwegian, he is very often mentioned as one true Thomas.
Meaning?
Thomas the skeptic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. You see, some people say that's bad. He's, the doubting Thomas or the skeptic.
Yeah.
But I say that's the first beginning of philosophy, is to doubt, which is what Descartes said, and that's where Socrates. That's what he said. That's the beginning of philosophy, is to doubt. Because if you don't doubt and ask questions and get to the truth and just accept everything on faith, they could be telling you a whole load of porkies.
But also we wouldn't have evolved if we didn't set questions to things.
We wouldn't have science.
Nope.
There'd be no dialectic,
Exactly.
which came out of Socrates asking all these awkward questions. And he was a martyr for it, because the establishment didn't like that. They accused him of heresy for asking too many questions. Where have you heard that before? So the Thomas tradition is that secret undercurrent within Christianity that asks the hard questions. And that's why I've got 1,000 people called Thomas in my book of Thomases, like Thomas à Becket, Thomas Jefferson, all these.
Thomas Alva Edison.
There's another one. Yeah, I've got a book over there on the table of, 1,000 Thomases, and they're really interesting. We don't, and there's never been a Pope Thomas, by the way, or a King Thomas, because they're not allowed to ask questions. They have to be definite, and whereas the Thomases are the philosophers, and so may it be. Thomas Aquinas is another famous one. Right, let's move on. So, look what I've got. Let's have a look at this one. It's very exciting. It's like Christmas all over again. We're coming up to Christmas. So, so this is called Ichwas, which is number 62, page 62 rather, and stands for the yew tree, and is a sort of tall shape, like standing upright. And it's sometimes associated with the spine in the human. Now let me find it here. Yes. That's a very good question. I mean, the problem is it's a vowel, and the Hebrew alphabet doesn't really do vowels as such. So I think when I was looking for the equivalent in Hebrew, I struggled to find the Hebrew equivalent to Echwas. So I don't think it got a mention in the Qabalah Runes, but it's nevertheless an important rune. And I think it's that E sound. So we need that. It's the most common letter in the English alphabet. It's a vowel. It stands for patience. And when I was in Scotland, we had a yew in the garden. They're the oldest long-lived trees in the tree forest. So it's a profound, yeah. Oh no, here it is. Sorry. Yes, I found him. Yoho, he's also called, the yew. And so, yeah, it's a magical rune, but I think that one has to give thanks for the antiquity of these trees. Is there a yew in the village? Have you found one anywhere?
I haven't seen one now.
What is a yew?
It's a sort of scraggly tree that grows lots of trunks. It doesn't, like normal trees, they have one trunk and they grow up. And this thing has got multiple trunks which grow and die, and the whole thing keeps going for 5,000 years. They're kind of like evergreens. They have leaves of spikes, and they have berries, red berries as well. They're very noticeable. I have not seen a yew in the village, but they must be around in this part of France, I would have thought. They often are in churchyards in Wales. Every Welsh churchyard had yews planted because they were so long-lived, I think. Sorry, I can't find the right page, but yes. Immortality is the thing about the yew, I think. Right, so look, I think we'll finish our philosophy club there. Is there any other questions, finally, to conclude with, or points? There's the Book of Magic. I'm just going to read one final quote to finish from my new favourite book by Chris Gosden, professor at Oxford. And he's tried to write a complete history of magic in the entire world. He's an archaeologist, and he's going back into the earliest times. It's really interesting. And he argues that we humans began with magic. Religion came later. And Frazer, I think, agrees with him. So, okay, well, let's finish there. And let's hope that this week brings us festivals of joy, and Christmas is coming. Your children must be looking forward to it.
Oh, they're very excited.
Yeah.
We will.
Good. What are you going to do for Christmas? Are you going anywhere or having it at home?
No, we're at home, so
Yeah.
if you want to come on the Christmas Eve, you're more than welcome.
In Norway, do you when you open the presents? That's the key thing.
That's Christmas Eve, normally.
Christmas Eve.
Do you? Oh, okay.
Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve.
Which was harder though, because as a child you would walk around all day looking at all those presents, having to wait for dinner, waiting for dessert, and then the adults said they needed to have a snooze before the present. Oh, it was horrible.
Really?
You also had to do the dishes.
Have to do the dishes.
Oh no! So you don't get to open the present till later on the evening.
Yeah, about like 8, 9 at
Christmas
night.
Eve.
Yeah.
By which time you're really tired and stuff. Okay.
No,
So what happens on Christmas Day itself then?
Christmas Day, we were brought up with saying if you go anywhere on Christmas Day, you're wearing a horse's head. You're supposed to be at home with family on Christmas Day, not walk around and disturb the neighbours. Everything was
Family day.
So it's a sort of staying in.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's nice.
But we had, I think, over the last few years, we had a mix of Norwegian and English traditions. So
Well, they're probably quite similar, aren't they? But we used to do presents on Christmas Day.
on Christmas Day morning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the kids obviously wanted the tradition of the Norwegian one on the 24th, so,
Yeah.
so they could get the presents
Quicker.
quicker. Yeah.
Yeah.
naughty.
Well, I hope that it goes well for them, and I might well pop in. I'll come and say hello.
You're more than welcome
Done.
for a good dinner.
Oh, well, there we are. That's the thought. Yes.
There is
More than welcome.
either we have
Either the West Coast Norwegian Christmas, which is pinnekjøtt.
it's dried, salted dried mutton ribs,
Okay.
steamed for about 3 hours with stewed, ordinary potatoes, boiled potatoes,
Okay.
stewed.
So not like a
stewed swede.
not a turkey then. That's
No.
not part
Turkey
of your
is
That's us.
banned.
thing. Okay.
He
No,
doesn't.
no turkeys.
Or it'll be pork
Right.
belly
Or with pork belly
with
with
crackling in.
crackling.
But we'll put the English, which I absolutely love,
Right.
Yorkshire pudding. So I will make
Oh,
my
yeah,
own
no, that's
Yorkshire
good.
puddings.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have that. You can't not have that on a good pork belly.
Well, I'm a sort of semi-vegetarian, but I do sometimes make exceptions for special feasts.
Yes.
For a good meal.
My daughter was a strict vegetarian, but you know,
Hey,
all of the
Lizzie.
cats finally turned up. Hello, darling.
You'll have to buy
Hello,
your-
sweetie. Oh my God.
Well, that didn't
Right.
look good.
No, her eye is not good, is it? Can you see it?
Yeah.
It's got worse. We're worried about her. Right, let me turn off and attend to Madison. She's so sad. I don't deserve this. Right. Thank you.